I think we could probably get started here because we've got a lot of folks and we're about on time. Good morning and welcome everyone to the Safe Routes to Schools Network call. I'll start sharing my screen. Slideshow. Today is May 5th. We just had Bike to School Day. I'm Eric Thompson. I work with Move Minnesota till the end of the day. And we host the Safe Routes Schools Network call. And on today's agenda, we have the welcome and introductions, which is a little bit different just because as many of y'all know, I'm leaving the post today. So we're going to introduce some of the folks at Move Minnesota that are going to take over. We'll have a MnDOT update, and I don't know if Dave got to it, but hopefully there's an active transportation station slide in this presentation. We're going to do a Bike to School Day recap. We're going to share some photos and then break into some groups to share some stories real quick. And then we're going to talk school sighting with Sarah Zimmerman, and then we're going to get a quick walk bike fun update with Angela from Bike MN, and we're going to be fluid because both of those folks have some things going on in their lives, and hopefully they get on the call by the time we're ready for them. So with that, we're going to do some intros, and I will stop sharing my screen in a moment here, but we've got these are the folks that are going to be working on the call in the future. We've got Sam Rockwell, who's the executive director at Move Minnesota, Alyssa Shovin, who's the director of strategic partnerships at Move Minnesota, and Julie Johnson, who's a community organizer at Move Minnesota. So I'm just going to let each one of them kind of introduce themselves quickly and maybe tell why they're excited about this work. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let Sam introduce himself first. Nope, Sam, we can't hear you. We're starting with technical difficulties. We're going to go with 1 second. So maybe we'll start with Alyssa. Alyssa, do you want to introduce yourself and say why you're excited about this work?
Yeah, fingers crossed I'm not also having technical difficulties. Can y'all hear me? Great. Good morning, everybody. My name is Alyssa Shuffman. I use she and they pronouns. As Eric mentioned, I'm the director of strategic partnerships at Move Minnesota. And I think I'm super excited to come to this work first as a kid who walked to school. Like I used to be a kid who walked to school, and that was a really important independence thing for me as a kid, starting in like second grade. So really excited to bring that lens to this work. I am now an adult who bikes everywhere. I have had some overlap with folks. I was fortunate enough to be part of the SHIP strategic planning process in 2019. And I also serve on the Minneapolis Bicycle Advisory Committee, where I get to work with Jenny Borden. Hi, Jenny. Nice to see you this morning, and other folks. So really excited to be bringing some of my lived experience to this work and some of my volunteer hats to this work and getting more plugged in. So thanks, folks.
Great. How about we'll go next to Julie because I'm still not sure on Sam.
I think I'm working now, right?
All right, go ahead, Sam.
All right. Hi, all. I am calling in from a day off of work, but appropriately on a bike ride here. So Sam Rockwell, he, him pronouns, and I am executive director of Move Minnesota. I'm thrilled to be doing more work with Safe Routes calls. For 4.5 or so years, sat next to Jill Chamberlain at Blue Cross Blue Shield Center for Prevention, and was mentored by Jill in all of the things Minnesota bike, walk, transit, and public health. So I am familiar with the Safe Routes network calls, having watched them for many years, and also I presented on one many years ago that Jill pulled me into. So thrilled to be here. And excited to be working with everybody in the months and years ahead.
Great, and then we'll go to Julie.
Hi, everybody. I'm Julie Johnson. I use she, her pronouns. I am a community organizer for Move Minnesota, and I mostly work with volunteer relations and recruitment for events. And I am really excited to be here because I love how intersectional transit work is and how it affects so many types of people and different paths of their lives. And I'm really excited to kind of be connected in the school's angle, because kids are so important and that's where they all start. So I'm so excited to be a part of this group and a part of these calls. And I'm really excited for, the weeks and months ahead. So thanks all.
Well, great to hear from y'all. And as you can see, to replace one person's work, we need three. That's just how good I am. We need three to replace the one. But in all seriousness, all three of those folks are phenomenal human beings and really motivated and connected with this work. So we're leaving it in good hands. But with that, I will pass it along to Dave to give the MnDOT update.
Give me a second here. Sorry. Is everybody seeing my screen okay?
Yep.
Great. Good morning, folks. For those of us that haven't met before, Dave Cowan, I use he, him pronouns, and I am the Safe Routes to School coordinator over at MnDOT. And we've got a couple of updates for you today. I'm also excited to get into some of the other topics. So I'm going to try and move through these slides fairly quickly. If anybody has any questions, feel free to stop me and I'll do that. So what we realized is between the meetup or the social last month and maybe a sick day for me in March, that we hadn't done a lot of updating on the awards that were given back in, I don't know, late February or early March for the various solicitations that we held over the winter time. So we thought we would do a quick update on some of those. And that's just kind of to maybe pat many of you on the back for the work that you did, working with a lot of these communities to help them pull together applications, or even just encourage them, let them know that the funding stream existed and that the technical assistance or the non-infrastructure funding could be used for things that they were working on in their communities. But in terms of planning grants, we saw quite a few communities that applied this round. It was actually really heartening after 2020 and I guess it would have been the 2020 solicitation, where we just didn't have as many applicants, I think, due to the pandemic. We really saw kind of a surge back in terms of the quantity of folks that were interested in Safe Routes to School planning again. So congratulations to a lot of these communities, and congratulations to many of you who helped them line up for this funding. Most of these communities should be, we're entering in contracts right now with the planning consultants and the regional development commissions that'll be doing the work in these communities. So in the next month or two, each of the Safe Routes to School leads for these different communities can expect to be hearing from those that we work with to do the planning. We also did a lot of non-infrastructure or like implementation granting through our Boost program. Congratulations to these folks, all who had just a variety of different projects. I think we funded at least 7 bike fleets and some trailers for Walk Bike Fun implementation moving into the future. We helped seed the kickstart of a Project Bike Tech program, traffic safety playgrounds, some media campaigns, and safety training and events that kind of revolve around pedestrian and bicycle safety. So we're excited to get those folks also under contract so that they can start doing their work. We've been working with many of them. And again, thank you to you all for letting them know that this opportunity was out there, that they could access it. We funded around $300,000 in non-infrastructure projects this round, and expect to be doing it again next fall. So if you're talking to folks now that see these communities as they get their projects going and are jealous or interested, envious, I don't know which one of those words to use, feel free to let them know that coming this fall, we'll be doing it again, and they'll have another chance to apply for boost funding. We also had maybe the most state dollars we've ever had available for Safe Routes to School infrastructure projects. A couple of quick slides to give you a summary of that, rather than describing these in too much detail to you. We had 55 total applications. We didn't receive any applications from tribes this year, but for those of you that have been on the call, you know that we have now begun the practice of filtering applications into funding pools based on the what you're seeing down there at the bottom of the screen, the size of the cities and whether or not they're state aid cities, which is a pretty commonly used classification in state aid. And then we rank those applications based on their merit once they're in those different funding pools. And actually, I think Mitch Kicker's on the call, and Mitch, you can correct me if I get anything wrong here with these slides. So similarly, we had about, I don't know, 17 or 18 million dollars, $17.5 million in requests, which actually broke down very close to the number of applicants in each pool. And we thought it would be useful to compare the last time that we had a state Safe Routes to School state infrastructure solicitation with how we did in 2021. And it's worth noting that along with a historic level of funding that was available, we had a historic level of interest. 55 applications in 2021 versus 29 applications in 2018. Much greater interest in the metro suburbs and greater Minnesota state aid cities. It was really good to see more involvement from different types of communities this round. And then similar results with the total grant requests. I would say there was a huge interest in the suburbs, but I think maybe the biggest takeaway from here is that there continues to be demand with Safe Routes to School projects, and there appears to be some correlation between the amount of money that we have available for Safe Routes projects and people's willingness to apply. So we hope to package that messaging as legislators think about how much they might be allocating to Safe Routes to School in the future, and understand that that the level of applications that are coming in being related to the amount of money available is an important distinction to make, because oftentimes we're just asked to quantify the demand based on the number of applications, and that doesn't always tell the full story. But finally, here's the list of infrastructure grant awards. Hopefully, you all see some of yourself in this list. We certainly got to spread the money around the state much more, I think, because there was more money and because there were more applications than in prior solicitations. And then finally, we had the demonstration project technical assistance out. This was the first time that we had funding available for active transportation and Safe Routes to School demonstration project. We had maybe a lower application submission for these projects. And you can see down at the bottom here who we awarded, at least with the Safe Routes to School demonstration project. I left AT off of here because I'm not sure if they've informed those communities yet. But we funded Richfield, Green Central Elementary in Minneapolis, and Hancock Public School for demonstration projects that we'll see installed this coming fall. Again, if this is something that you see and it's maybe a neighboring community sees it happening, gets excited about it, it's something you want to do, we will have another application open in the fall. Unfortunately, it will be active transportation only, as we've kind of run up to the end of our Safe Routes demonstration projects for the time being. Any questions from folks on the solicitations, on awards, on anything related to that process? Happy to answer those. Jill Chamberlain also mentored me in embracing the awkward silence after questions like that. But it does seem like we don't have any questions. You can always follow up with our office, either myself or Kelly Corbin or Mitch, if you have questions about specific solicitations. And I bet you Kelly dropped in the chat the link. We now have started the practice of publishing solicitation results showing, both people that applied and received funding and those that did not, and kind of how they did in the scoring process on our grants website, so that we can be more transparent with all of you as applicants. So please feel free to jump over there and take a look at how things shook out. The other thing that we realized is like we definitely did not do enough talking about all the events that have been happening over the past couple of months. I'm glad that we have a little time today to hear from you all on Bike to School Day, but we didn't have the opportunity to talk about Winter Walk to School Day. We ended up with 36 registered schools, which may seem low for a walk and bike to school day event, but actually for Winter Walk to School Day, it's about par for the number of schools that are willing and interested in participating in a snowy, cold walk and bike to school day event. The Golden Snow Boot Award this year went to Rice Elementary. It was their first event. It was one of the strategies that came out of their Safe Routes to School plan, along with this kind of railroad crossing concern that you can see in the photo to the right. And so, Kelly, maybe you have a little bit more information, or maybe you're not going to jump on about that event.
Yeah, the full story is in the link that I sent about the Golden Snow Boot Award, but it was near a dangerous railroad crossing that was recognized in their plan. And so they used this event to have some volunteers help the students cross. But they also did some discussion about possible engineering solutions and trying to raise the community awareness over what they could do to make this a safer place for kids to walk and cross to get to school. So it was a really good way of using an event to leverage a policy, systems, or environmental change kind of strategy.
Thanks, Kelly. I couldn't see the chat, so I didn't know what you had done. So that was Winter Walk to School Day, which feels like it was a decade ago. But we also just yesterday, and perhaps a little fresher in people's minds, had Bike to School Day. This year we had 117 schools that have registered so far. Just for those of you that never got around to registering at walkbiketoschool.org, but maybe you had an event. This is kind of an important metric and indicator for the Safe Routes program. So if you didn't register, please jump on there and register your school. I think you have until actually the end of May to make sure that all of your schools are registered. And that our poster contest is still open. So that is until May 20th, that any student can download our little lesson plan or template and make a poster that shows what is it, how does it feel to bike to school, and we'll be judging those later this month, and the winners receive these great little bike gift packets from Quality Bicycle Products. But now we're to the part of the, this is the part of the call that I'm feeling very excited about, is hearing from all of you. So maybe practice looking for your mute and unmute button, because we would love to hear people's stories of Bike to School Day yesterday. And I just thought I would lead with mine, because I'm still kind of abuzz with how Bike to School Day went at my kids' schools. Mostly because I got to spend the morning standing next to Princess Leia, the crossing guard, which went over like really well on May 4th. So the students were just absolutely jazzed about that. At our kids' school, we do a kind of a traditional Bike to School Day for all those kids that live close enough to the school, and we organize bike trains. And as you can see on the right here, we just had a ton of bikes in our bike racks, but we also, for all the students that just don't live close enough to walk or bike, do a bus stop and walk, where the students get to walk about 4 or 5 blocks to school. So that's why you're seeing a lot of students walking, and of course, Princess Leia helping them cross the street. So that was my experience, and I just, it's always good for me to get away from my desk and go do actual safe routes to school activities like we talk about here all the time. But I'm curious if anybody else wants to chime in and just, I don't know, what were you really excited about after yesterday? What went really well? Anybody want to pop in?
I can go. We had a bike to school event, the first one that we've ever done in Fisher, Minnesota. They have a school population of about 265 students, and they ended up having, I believe, 40 ride yesterday, which I thought was pretty good for the school population. And they have, a lot of rural farmsteads and things like that where kids, needed to get bused, but they had a great turnout. We actually do bike to school week at Safe Kids Grand Forks. So we do lots of events. So that wasn't our only one. We'll do 8 of them this week. So yeah, oh, there's some pictures. So it was super awesome. We had some helpers from Polk County Public Health as well there with us. That's Amanda you see there from Polk County Public Health. So we'll be in Crookston tomorrow. And then we were at South Point in East Grand Forks on Tuesday where we had, I believe, 79 kids ride. So lots of good stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
we were busy, very busy. And in Fisher, we got about 10 more helmets on kids too. We have a grant that we're able to give away some free helmets for kids who come without one on those days. And so we got about 10 helmets fitted that morning as well. So super exciting stuff. The stickers went over super well. They were wearing them on their foreheads and backpacks and jackets. So thanks to you guys too for all that stuff. But yeah, super, super great.
That's fun. I like how you get to spread out your experience over a week of, all the different bike to school day events, different places. I think we have a slide. What was the other? You mentioned South Point too, didn't you?
Yep, South Point.
Let's see, where did?
Yep, there we go. Oh yeah,
There we go.
73. There we go.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we only have these, Jessica. Thank you for submitting the photos on the Minnesota Safe Routes to School Facebook page. That's always a fun place to see the stories from around the state roll in. So if you're on this call and you haven't joined the Minnesota Safe Routes to School Facebook page or you don't follow it, pop over there and you can see lots of great stories that people posted. Anyone else? I know there were folks out there doing things because we saw all the media.
Hey, sorry, I was having some technical issues, but I think can you
We can see you.
you can see me but can't hear me?
No, we can hear you too.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah, I had a really good quote in New Ulm. We're doing a bike ride later this month, but yesterday we did some walking school buses to also celebrate. And I had a little second grader say walking to school epic. And I don't know, it was just a really good one. I was super happy to hear that. And I don't know, we had a good day. They said walking to school is epic. Yeah, so yeah, it was a good time. I got a photo behind me here of our kids walking to school. We had 2 groups from 2 locations, and it's kind of more of a school bus drop off kind of thing. Like we get a lot of kids from the country who usually don't get to walk to school. Their parents will drop them off at 2 locations, and we had 20 kids walk to school. And we're also hoping to do something at the end of this month with our New Ulm bike group for kids too, to get on bicycles to school. But yeah, it was a fun day, and I just love that quote, walking to school is epic.
I love it too. I tried to highlight or spotlight you. I don't know, does that show up big for other folks or does it just move your picture to the top?
Just moves the picture.
Okay. I just wanted to be able to see that walking school bus a little bit closer.
I'll email it to you.
That's great. Anyone else?
I can go quick too. We had a a pretty successful event in Rochester. We donated 18 bikes. 11 of them were to middle school students, and then we went on a ride from middle school to an elementary school where we gave away 7 more. And all the kids were super excited, super pumped. So I didn't get a chance to drive by to see if they actually biked them to school today, but I plan on driving by and seeing. But yeah, it was a fun event. The kids got out early. We got to bike around together as a group. On the bike ride to the elementary school, we had the police department leading the way, and then we had a SUV behind us with the lights on and stuff, and he was playing music on his loudspeaker.
Motorcade, huh?
Yeah, super cool. All the cars were just loving it, waving and laughing and stuff. So yeah, super fun.
Thanks, Dustin.
I can jump in with a little from Minneapolis Public Schools. I think we had about 30 schools register. In the morning, some of my teammates were at a middle school with the bike blender, and they counted more than 70 bikes on the racks. So that was super fun. And then in the afternoon, we did our big ride, the Let's Roll MPS. I think we made the Star Tribune. We had 3 school groups that were, 70 or 80 kids, and then 30 volunteers biking, and then just community members. We had our city friends were there, our ship friends were there, our Safe Routes to School friends were there, other just people that like biking and like kids were there. And it was super fun. We do a 5-mile loop kind of through the city. Kind of experiencing a little bit of everything, some kind of adrenaline, adding driving on Plymouth Avenue, kind of easy on the River Road, old Minneapolis on the cobblestones, and then through a little bit of woods before we make it home. Some of our favorite things that we heard on the ride, a volunteer actually yelled out, "This is the best day of my life." Kids, when we approached the Hennepin Avenue Bridge, a kid was heard saying, "Is this San Francisco?" Another volunteer reported that the kid was like, how much further? Like how many legs? Because we said there's 4 legs. We had 3 catch-up spots. And how many legs are on this tour? And then the volunteer was like, well, how far do you want to go? Or how long do you want to go? And the kid said, forever. So it was a great time.
I love those quotes.
With that being said, I feel like I should share some of the pictures because I was on that ride. If now's a good time for it, Dave.
Yeah, you can steal my share.
Yeah. Let's see if I can do this. 1 second. And here we go. Can you see my screen? So we've got some educators rolling in, excited for the day. We've got some volunteers from Bike MN, from folks from QBP, from the city. We've got Jenny taking the reins, organizing all the folks. We've got Julie Danzel, and then we've got Dave here. Dave rocking the wings. I should have got one from the back in the slides. Dave had some fairy wings on for this ride, which was nice.
Okay, let me jump in right there.
Yeah,
like
please.
The communications, they're going to put a video out. They sent me one that has Dave in it as a teacher. I was like, you better change that. So we'll see where the final, I don't have a lot of power here. We'll see where the final video lands.
And then we got students on a stationary bike that was making, what is that called? They were making like smoothie bike.
Kale, one of the fabulous 5 vegetables that we're promoting also in Minneapolis Public Schools.
Chopping up kale, students crossing. Getting on to the Stone Arch Bridge, which is all one of our favorites. It's always a little bit difficult on this bridge because pedestrians are constantly wandering into the bike lane, but it worked out for us.
But look how beautiful they are, like single file on the bridge. We look good.
Yep. And then we're lined up at the end of the bridge, just kind of waiting for folks. And we were treated to a gentleman who was on a unicycle doing tricks here. It's kind of hard to see him. He's on the right of your screen, but the kids love that and clapped quite a bit for this guy doing tricks on a unicycle. And then we stopped by the river, and a lot of students had fun kind of looking into the river and getting ready to roll back. Thumbs up, good ride. Crossing one of these San Francisco bridges. And that's all I got from there. But it was.
I just want to add, here, Eric, that I mean, I know a lot of people on the call here have been out with groups of students on bicycles. But being on a ride with this many students is like both like very exciting and also very terrifying. So I think a big kudos to Jenny, who does an amazing job of organizing this upsized ride through the city. It's really remarkable.
No, huge kudos. That was honestly, I've done a lot of bike rides with students, and this one was the biggest, going across some heavy traffic, a little bit terrifying at times. But I think it was really cool that the students got to see biking as recreation, but also using that infrastructure as biking as transportation as well. So I think that was a really unique experience and very, very cool.
Well, that was Eric. That was the end of what I had. I don't know if anybody else would like to jump in. We're got just a couple minutes left. Is that right?
Yeah.
On Bike to School Day.
If anyone else wants to share, please. Successes, challenges. Fair enough. I think with that, we will pass it over to Sarah to talk about some school siting. I'm going to make you a co-host. We are ready to rock.
Thank you. Let's just see here if I can get my. Do y'all see my screen? Excellent. Well, hello everybody. Thank you so much for having me today. It was really fun to see all those pictures of your great Bike to School Day. That was a very impressive last ride there. I'm Sarah Zimmerman. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a longtime Safe Routes to School advocate and a sub-consultant with Alta Planning and Design's team that is supporting MnDOT's implementation of the 2020 Safe Routes to School strategic plan, kind of a mouthful. And I've been managing the part of this work that relates to school siting. And so today what I'm going to do is just give you a little overview of this project. I'm going to start out by telling you a little bit also about why school siting is important, kind of give you some more of the context of that. And then we'll have a chance for you to give some feedback on a few of the resources that we are starting to develop as part of this project. So let's see here. Right, so just to start out by letting you know a little bit about what this specific project entails. As I mentioned, this is part of a larger contract that the Alta team has with MnDOT, focusing on implementing the 2020 Safe Routes to School strategic plan. And so one of the components of that plan was focus on school siting and the need to kind of work on that and think about that in order to make Safe Routes to School be all that it can be in Minnesota. So this current project had these kind of 5 key elements, which were developing a school siting literature and best practices review, convening a school siting working group, and some of the people on this call participated in that, so thanks to those folks. Doing key informant interviews to make sure that we were kind of grounded and really informed by what was going on in Minnesota. developing some school siting resources that would help with improved practices, and then developing some recommendations for resource dissemination and for next steps. So we've completed the first 3 of those steps, and we're now working on the last 2. So we're going to, as I said, I'm going to kind of walk through some of the background of school siting and then ask for some of your thoughts on the drafts of the resources that we're developing. So while I am giving you a quick overview of some of those school siting issues, I just want to have you hold a few questions in mind. And really the kind of key elements there are around what would help you get involved with school siting, if that's something you haven't gotten involved with or have sort of struggled to get involved with in your community, and what would help you persuade others that thinking about community-centered schools and walkable and bikeable schools at the school siting stage it matters and is significant. So let me give you a little background on why this all matters so much. So the big picture related to this relates to kind of our key goal. So what we're really looking for when we think about how we want schools to exist in our communities and how we want them to support and be supported by our communities is that we want to see schools that are walkable, bikeable, racially and economically diverse, and we want them to be conveniently located within communities. And we want to make sure that they're supporting quality education, vibrant neighborhoods, walking and biking, and community needs. But the challenge that we have is that we are headed the other way in many respects. So back in 1969, 45% of students lived a mile or less from their school. By 2001, only 24% of students did. So why are schools poorly sited? There are really kind of a wide range of reasons, but in some ways, there's 2 key things that are driving this trend overall. So one has to do with overall trends that you're probably all well aware of around how we use land. So suburbanization and sprawl are really contributing to this overall. And then the other trend has to do with trends in school size and design, promoted both by national education facility planners, but then also by sort of adopted by states and taken on by many education facilities planners around the country. So why does this all matter so much? Of course, I think we on this call are all really aware that a really key factor when we're thinking about these issues from safe routes to school purposes has to do with the fact that distance from school is really directly related to the number of students who walk or bike. And this little chart just shows what we know, but very clearly, which is that the kind of cream color there, which is the percentage of students who are walking or biking, is very large when students live within a quarter mile of school, still substantial when they're a half mile or a mile from school, but then drops significantly as students get more than a mile and more than 2 miles from school. And of course, all of these things have a deep influence on students' health and also on academic achievement. When students can walk and bike to school, they get more physical activity, they're healthier, and that helps with academic achievement, as you know, there's a multitude of studies that show. In addition, the climate crisis is beginning to affect people's everyday lives, our weather, our exposure to natural disasters. And this is really demanding a different approach to land use planning. Transportation is the biggest contributor to climate emissions, both in the United States as a whole and also in Minnesota. And that really requires that we have more walking and biking, we have less driving, we develop in more compact ways, in addition to things like electric vehicles, which can help, but only really play part of that role. And then finally is the fact that when we have schools that are really far flung from where students live, that's expensive and inefficient. So we, a sort of old statistic, which probably is much higher now, is that school districts across the US spend $17 billion a year on school bus transportation costs, on operations primarily and gas. Of course, with gas volatility, that's much higher right now as well. but there are also costs for families in gas, in time, and costs for local jurisdictions in maintaining roads and other kinds of services that need to get out to schools that are far from neighborhoods. So when we look at how this is playing out in Minnesota, we see that there are many reasons to believe that school construction is generating schools that aren't walkable and are not friendly for safe routes to school in Minnesota. So one study showed that 75% of Minnesota parents said that distance affected their decision regarding whether their student would walk or bike to school. And 70% of principals in Minnesota said that distance was a major or a moderate barrier to students walking and biking. The school construction approval process in Minnesota very much favors very large minimum acreage requirements, so that schools need a very, very large site in order to establish a new school. And it requires a lot of justification for smaller sites or for renovations, which can really disfavor those options. And then as we've been doing this project, we've been really searching for examples of school siting processes that focused on walkability and focused on making sure that schools were sort of in the center of communities. And I've had a really hard time finding success stories on that front. So that provides us with some anecdotal evidence that there's really some challenges for community-centered schools as well. We wanted to also make sure that we just gave you a quick overview of how the school construction process works in Minnesota. So generally, it starts, of course, with the district identifying a need or an interest in some sort of new or renovated facility, maybe because there's a lot of new kids in the district, and there's the education will lead to kind of outgrowing space, maybe because some of the buildings are really old and are deteriorating and have been renovated many times before. So reasons like that. Then there's a site or sites are selected, and there's pre-design estimates that take place. So that might be just one site is selected and the design starts there, or it may really involve having a few different options. The plan then needs to be submitted to the Minnesota Department of Education Commissioner in most cases, not always, but generally that's the process for state review and comment. And then if that review is positive, the proposal comes back and goes to the voters for approval of financing for this new construction. And then if that financing is approved, that's the point at which site design takes place. And then finally, after that, the new construction or renovation actually occurs. And so I bolded a couple of words on this slide. And what these really show us is the points at which there's opportunities for involvement and intervention by safe routes to school folks or other community members to affect what that final decision is going to look like and whether or not that's going to really be a community-centered walkable school or not. So I wanted to just wrap this section up by kind of telling you a few of the key takeaways that really came out of the research and the interviews and the work group discussions that happened on this. So the first one was the fact that I mentioned earlier, the large acreage requirements that can make it really hard to locate new schools in existing neighborhoods. And something that we were really struck by is the fact that Minnesota's guidelines are the largest in the US, so larger than any other state, in terms of how big they're really recommending that a site be for a new school. And they're twice as large as some national guidelines that were actually withdrawn in 2003 because they were so big. So they're really sort of like a little out of sync with the size of recommendations for site sizes in other states. A few other things that really came out of the fact that community members often don't really know that a school siting decision is in play until it's too late to influence it. So people often find out about it like when school construction is about to start, or at the point when there's the site's already been decided and it's being presented to the voters for approval of the financing. Another point that was made was the fact that when there are community engagement meetings that are held by consultants or folks like that around these issues, they're often very poorly attended. And the people who do attend them tend to not be very focused on community-centered schools or walkability as priorities. They're worried about parking and other things that may sort of drive decisions in the other way. So that both shows that there's kind of an issue around whether or not communities are prepared and interested in getting engaged here, but also an opportunity to turn people out and demonstrate people's interest in walkability and community-centered schools. And then finally, a point that came out that was very significant is just the fact that these decisions are such long-term and influential decisions for communities. School buildings are in place for a long time. The average age of a school building in the US apparently is 42 years old. So 30 years, 40 years to really even 100 years, as we see with many schools in Minnesota, is how long the decisions that are made are going to keep on influencing development patterns and transportation patterns in the community as a whole. So they're important to get right. All right, so with that, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the resources that we're developing to hopefully help support people who are interested in this issue and move things in a better direction. So we worked with our work group to get some recommendations about who the audience for the resources that we were going to develop should be and what kinds of resources we should develop. And what we really saw from the discussions and surveys that we did with that group was that there was a sense that working at developing resources that were aimed at the local level was going to be the most important thing to do. And that wasn't because there wasn't a lot of perception of the need to change some of the practices that might be happening at the state level, but I think the local level felt sort of practical and doable and an area where there was really a need for resources. And then people had a variety of different suggestions for the kinds of resources that we should develop. Meeting in a box, sample template policies, tools to explain the importance of school siting and focus around having those conversations. And so we tried to incorporate those into the two sets of resources that we selected and have begun to develop. So the first resource that we're developing is a mini guide focused on supporting community-centered schools. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second. And then the second one is a meeting in a box. So those are resources that are to support people who want to host a community school siting meeting. For both of these, the main audience is safe routes to school practitioners, the public at large, and local decision makers. And the goal and the sort of key aim of the resources that we're trying to develop is around providing ready to use resources that are, that people can take, maybe adapt a little bit and just run with, that'll help them to understand the issues around school siting and why those matter, help them understand where there are intervention points, and help them to make a difference. So I'm just walking you quickly through the mini guide. The gist of this, the kind of core idea here is that it's a short resource that's going to provide key information and tools to help people understand how the school siting process works, where those opportunities for influencing it are, and to have tools kind of in hand that they can use to influence it and make a difference. So these are the short sections that are included in the mini guide. A sort of introduction and overview, a focus on the benefits of diverse and walkable schools, an overview of how the school siting process works, information about hosting a school siting community meeting, information about influencing a school siting committee, information on site design, and then on lasting policy change. And these are each sort of pullouts so that you can use each of these sections as kind of a standalone fact sheet.
And Sarah, just a time check. We're at about 5 minutes remaining, I think.
Yeah, I'm about to open it up to the group. So the second resource is a meeting in a box. And the idea here is that this provides people with a PowerPoint, talking points, information on how to host a meeting on school siting, information for a group exercise to help the community determine its priorities for school siting, and a community meeting agenda. And again, with the idea that those are sort of things that people can use to grab and go. All right, so with that, I wanted to see if people had thoughts on this. So if you have questions about this project or about school siting, if you have feedback on these resources, we'd be very eager to hear that and incorporate that into these drafts. Dave, do you want to frame any of these questions anymore? We're definitely interested both in, whether these are things that you feel like you would use, whether they seem like they might not be useful for any reason, if there's anything you see that's missing here.
Yeah, I guess I would just say aloud that I can imagine that this might be difficult to conceptualize if you haven't dealt with a school siting issue directly in your community. So we know that going in. Would just be interested to hear how our direction sounds to you all. If there's anything that you want to make sure that could have been useful to you or that you could imagine would be useful, that would be helpful to know about.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say quickly that I think trying to make a tool so that it makes it easier to kind of campaign for these things, specifically when we're creating a school site that might not be the cheapest, but we know will be the most effective, because there will be people pushing the other way because they know that their taxes will be paying for it. So creating some materials that we can use to kind of change that perception and try to do it very early. So not like as much of a big guy, but something that we can make that we can adapt and is small and people can digest pretty easily to kind of campaign for this, because that's kind of what it will be.
That's great. That's really helpful.
Hello, this is Jason Walker. I'm in the Southwest. It'd be more of a policy thing, but I'd love for schools to be required early on in the siting process to actually be required to send notice out to key stakeholders in the community about what they're thinking, so that then people can get involved, and it would just be a requirement that they do so. I mean, I work a lot with solar and wind siting, and they have all kinds of regulations and things they have to do and public hearings they have to do to site anything responsibly, and I don't think it should be any different for schools. Just my 2 cents.
That's a great point, and certainly could be a best practice that we encourage districts to engage in, even if it's not a state law that requires them to do it. It's really helpful. I too am trying to embrace the awkward silence. We can all learn from Jill Chamberlain.
Yeah, we've got your email in the chat, and I have some other thoughts that I'm going to send you as well, and hopefully other folks, as they kind of think about it, we'll send you some more thoughts and or questions. But we've got one last thing here. We're gonna
let me just, Eric, if you don't mind, can I just tell people next steps and then hand it over to you for that? Okay. So I just wanted to tell you guys what the next steps on this whole project are. And one thing I wanted to invite you to do, as you saw, I put my email into the chat. If you'd like to review the actual drafts and give feedback on them in that way, if that's how your brain works, if you email me by May 9th, which is next Tuesday, I'm happy to share those out with you and get your feedback that way. So we'll incorporate the feedback and finalize the resources. We're also going to be providing some recommendations around other steps that can happen. We'll be disseminating the resources when they're done, and we hope that all of you will help with that and use those. And then we're hoping that'll end with school siting improving in Minnesota. All right, back over to you, Eric.
Great, thank you so much. All right, just really quickly at the end here, Angela from Bike MN is going to give us a quick little update on a walk bike fun.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me on the call. My name is Angela Olson. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the education director at Bike MN. I'm outside right now. I just got dropped off like 10 minutes ago, but I've been on the call. CJ, Helena, and I, the education team over at Bike MN, just did a ride over at Phelan Park Elementary, leading about 40 fourth graders on a nice little 5-mile ride around Lake Phelan. It was really lovely. And we were there yesterday, kind of helping kids get sized up for bikes. And we'll be back again tomorrow to lead another ride. So it was a really fun, exciting ride. So really nice day. to do it. And yeah, just a little update on Walk Bike Fun for you all. We currently have several sites scheduled for our Walk Bike Fun training, which is really exciting. We did one with MPS at the beginning of April. That went really well. We had like 6 educators come over to the headquarters and oh, thank you, Kelly. Yeah, appreciate that. Kelly just dropped the link for info on our trainings. We've got one next week down in Rochester, and then another one on the 17th with St. Paul. And then we have a couple other that we're trying to figure out some scheduling for in June, and then we'll probably do a couple in the fall as well. So I've been telling folks that if you've been in contact with probably CJ or myself about Walk Bike Fun trainings, and you're worried about having enough people or trying to make it work, just email us and we'll try and figure it out with you. We have some capacity still, even though the call is technically over. Just email me, Angela@bikeandmen.org, and we can figure out a way to make it work for you, because we still have capacity. We still have some more sites that we'd like to hit up. And yep, thanks, Kelly. Put my email in the chat. And yeah, we're also in the process of reviewing our curriculum and adding some more things to it. So if this year doesn't work out, next year will be a good time to jump in, because we'll have some more things to learn. So I think that's the short and quick update on what's going on with Walk Bike Fun.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Angela. And with that,
But before you close, Eric, I failed to include a slide on our active transportation planning assistance solicitation that's open right now. So I just dropped a link to that to folks. If you're working in a community that's looking for maybe a plan that is broader than just safe routes to school, that solicitation is open through June. It's very similar to safe routes to school planning. So feel free to poke through there and see if maybe it's something you may wish to pursue.
Awesome. Well, with that, this has been a great call. It's been great working with y'all. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Hey, Eric. Goodbye.
Everyone.
It's been nice having you. This is your 10th and last Safe Routes Network call.
A good 10 months.
You're a wily veteran now. Just in time.